What is going on, Rain Gang? I'm your host, Sutton Def from the Purple Rain Podcast YouTube channel, and you're listening to Quiet Storm Sports, where on this episode, we will be reacting live to Eric Decosta and Steve Bisciotti as the Ravens general manager and owner. They're speaking to the media and addressing basically what happened this season and what to expect going forward. Let's go ahead and get into it. Yes. So like I said, welcome back, welcome one, welcome all to Quiet Storm Sports on the Purple Rain Podcast YouTube channel. Today, we have some stuff to cover. They're already underway, so I'm not gonna waste any time. I know you guys are already trickling in here. Appreciate y'all for coming through. Let's get into it, man. What are they talking about? What are they talking about here? Decosta and Steve Bisciotti. Where is this Ravens franchise going? Are we turning a new leaf? Who are we considering for head coach? Why did you fire Harbaugh? What happened? All of it. Let's take a listen. There we go.
Thank you for coming. Obviously, we don't do these very often. A lot of you have put your heart and soul into this team.
Yeah, we have.
And we appreciate most of it.
All right.
I don't really have anything to tell you that's not going to come out in your questions. So if you've got anything, Eric?
Just thanks for coming, first of all. I think from my perspective, a very disappointing season, but also we see great opportunity moving forward. We're very excited about this process ahead of us and building this team to be the very best we can be. Excited about that moving forward this spring. Our players are excited, and we plan on getting back to the standard that we've set. Questions?
Steve, good to talk to you.
Good to see you.
As far as whenever you fire a coach after 18 years, there's going to be a lot of speculation as to why and the reasons behind it. For you, what was the biggest reason that led to your decision, and when exactly did you make the decision to fire John Harbaugh?
Here we go.
I staked out a position that I thought I had come to, with a lot of thought and a lot of prayer, and gave it a lot of time to it. I mean, I think I talked to you 3-4 weeks ago, and
Interesting.
Probably
put an ultimatum
there's
out there.
it was, I guess the hardest part was the reasons, and unfortunately, most of these can't get traced back to John necessarily, but you factually, we led the league in giving up big leads in the fourth quarter. It's not something that winning organizations do.
Facts. That's a fact.
We have underperformed based on our seeding in the playoffs. Very disappointing.
Hold on. Did Mike Tomlin actually step down? Is that a fact? Is that breaking news here? Oh, it's true. Somebody just text me about it. Oh. Tomlin is stepping down after 19 seasons in Pittsburgh. The end of an era. Man. I mean, I guess both teams got what they wanted, right? Fire the coach, start a new regime. I'm not happy about it. I would have much rather them stick with Mike Tomlin, but I think the Steelers knew. They knew. That's why they came to this mutual agreement. We're going to get back into the video in a second. But this is my instant reaction to Mike Tomlin stepping down as Pittsburgh Steelers head coach after 19 years. Boy, that is something. That is something. But I think the Steelers knew that they could not go into this next year with, the Ravens turning over a new leaf. They're starting they're starting fresh, right? I think that they said, okay, we got to kind of stay on the same timetable. Again, the Ravens are the Steelers and the Steelers are the Ravens. This keeps getting proven to us, right? They're the same team. They're the same team. It's not a coincidence, right? It's not a coinky-dink that both of these coaches have been around for 18, 19 years, and they get fired within 1 week of each other. After almost 2 decades, it's not a coincidence. It's a copycat league. You cannot convince me otherwise. The Steelers are the Ravens, and the Ravens are the Steelers. And I guess the Steelers are joining the head coaching carousel, right? Who do they go after? Do they try to go after Brian Flores, right? What kind of philosophy are they trying to pivot to? I don't know. We'll cover that more later. But for now, let's hear more what Steve Bisciotti has to say.
A lot of players involved, a lot of our great players involved, making mistakes that they don't make during the regular season very often. But I just thought it was something that in the last 10 years, we've won the third most games in the NFL, and yet people were saying we were underachievers. And so we were, and we had to own that. And I really can't tell you the actual time, Jameson, but sometime last week. I wasn't 100% sure until really after the loss.
Yep.
And, fell on my instincts. And whatever I was feeling was right. I woke up Monday and I was pretty sure that, I was going to do it. And, I've got great partners here and spent a lot of time with them and asking them their opinions. And, I made the decision, and it was a hard one. And as you all know, in your life, timing is never right. You can't say that timing is perfect in anything. But I got to the point that I didn't believe that I would feel regret after I made that decision. And that's what instinct is. When you finally get to the point that you're pretty damn sure that you are not going to regret the decision a day or a week later, then that's the time to make the decision.
While I understand Bisciotti's point here, he's saying there's not the perfect time for anything, but when you find the instinct, when you get that instinct, right, that you feel like you're not going to regret it if you make this decision, that's when you should probably go ahead and make the decision. Only pushback I would give him is that you could have came to that conclusion some years ago, right? In fact, you almost did come to the conclusion years ago, back in 2017, right? But the Ravens drafted Lamar, and that saved everybody's job, right? Especially Harbaugh. So you were there before. It's just Lamar kind of acted as like a buffer. It made things feel like everything was okay, and John Harbaugh is actually still a really good coach. But now you see 8 years into Lamar Jackson's tenure with the Ravens, still no rings. Like he said, in the last 10 years, top 3 in wins, still no rings. That's an issue that could have been addressed way before this. Let's continue, though.
Is that fair?
Steve, did you speak with Lamar before you made the decision, and how would you characterize the influence he or other players' opinions on the situation had on your decision?
Yeah, I talked to a bunch of the veterans.
You probably talked to Marlon Humphrey.
And, it's funny. As you all know, you've gotten to know Lamar about as well as I have. And Lamar is really, really a non-confrontational person. And when I spoke to him Monday night, he said to me,
Uh-oh, here we go.
everybody's saying I got a problem with Monken. I don't really have a problem with Monken. I don't know where that comes from.
Okay.
And he said, and then I hear I've got a problem with Harbs, and I don't have a problem with Harbs. I don't know where that comes from. We got to make changes, probably, but that's probably more for you and E. And I said, well, your opinion matters, and we talked about it. And but again, he was one of the many. I'm going to turn my phone off before it starts ringing.
Please
Put
do,
it on
Steve.
vibrate.
Come on, Unc.
And so, yeah, I mean, I don't think that the players had an
So we did learn here, just before he keeps rambling here, because you got to pay attention to what Steve is saying. He said that Lamar Jackson said that at first, hey, look, I'm not going to get in between your decision, what you want to do with John and all that, but we probably do need to make changes. So Lamar Jackson did advocate for changes being made in terms of the coaching staff. Interesting.
and really a large part of my decision. My partners here probably had, that's an 80-20 thing. And I don't think I'd be a very good leader if I didn't ask the heads of the top players in my organization that have been here the longest. And you can bet they're the ones that have been here the longest. So, no, Lamar did not have an outsized part of my decision. My decision, I think, by Monday was pretty much set.
Clean it up.
And I think by the time I got off the phone with Lamar, I had told him that I think my position was pretty set, and that, but when I hang up from you, I don't want you to think the decision is ironclad. So that was Monday night.
Steve, right here. You've known John, obviously, a very long time. You're very close. Why the decision to fire him initially over the phone? And then secondly, what was the conversation, the gist of the conversation that you guys had a couple of days later?
Yeah, good question. I never in my mind, I never dreamed of firing somebody by phone, but the reality is when I made...
My man laughing about it too. It's like, I never thought about firing somebody over the phone like I just did 7 days ago to John Harbaugh, who had been with me for almost 2 decades. Ha ha ha.
My decision on Tuesday afternoon, I was home and he was in his car heading to his house. And I thought it would kind of be a jerk move to call him up and say, hey, coach, meet me at the office in an hour. I mean, he probably would have said, yeah, Steve, I'd rather not. Want to just tell me over the phone? And when I did tell him the decision that I made, I said, I'm really sorry about doing this over the phone. I wish we were together. And he said, you don't owe me an apology for that either. Did I answer your whole question?
The second part was just the gist of the conversation, a longer conversation.
Yeah, it was interesting because, obviously it was emotional, and I'll be honest with you, most of that emotion came from me. I told my brother, I said it was the craziest firing in the world. I was the one choked up, and he was the one consoling me. He said, you don't owe me anything. And you can picture, John, you don't owe me anything. He said, you gave me 18 years. He said, you picked a special teams guy. Who does that? He said, you altered mine and Ingrid's life forever because you took a chance on me. I am happy and content and disappointed, but I love you and I respect you and I respect your decision.
Why do I low-key want to shed a tear right now? Is that not a little sad to anybody else? Getting that insight on exactly how that conversation went over the phone, regardless of how you feel about John Harbaugh, right? Just for that to go down that way and Harbaugh to admit, hey, man, you gave me 18 years. You hired a special teams guy. You didn't have to do that, man. So the fact that it's all come to a head now and you got to let me go, you don't owe me anything, man. That kind of, that's kind of sad. That's kind of sad. Feel myself getting a little choked up listening to this right here.
And, at the time, it was not something that I was going to spend a lot of time with. And so, I called him on Thursday and I left a message and I said, hey, I'm around for the next few hours. I'd love to talk. And he texted me back. He said, I'll call you in about 30 minutes. And we had a really good conversation. And, interestingly, he didn't talk about the details. I talked about the negative narratives of things that we own together. And I said, John, probably one of the things that made it easier for me once I came to this conclusion is I didn't have to worry about whether you were going to land on your feet, because I think either your toes or your heels are already touching, and you're going to become the most sought-after coach in years. Yeah. And then I talked to him about taking a year off. I said, you know, you're 63 years old. Allison just went to law school. You're an empty nester. You know, if you go to work for somebody else, I get offset, so I'm saving a whole lot of money. But I'd be more than happy to give you a very expensive paid vacation for a year if you and Ingrid would pray on that and come to the decision that you could go out and travel and golf together and rifle. She's a marksman now, and they do love to travel when they're free. And I said, you know, a whole year of that at 63 is a lot different than if you take another job and that is 75. As we get older, you start realizing that, you know, 5-year chunks are changes in your life. And so I really, really, really would have hoped that he took a year off out of this crazy business that you work 80 hours a week and got a chance, because I said, like your friend Sean Payton, you'll still be the hottest coach next year. And you can do a little broadcasting and you can do a little traveling, and then you can get back into it. So,
yeah, I mean, I like the way that Steve Bisciotti was looking out for Harbs. He did what he had to do in firing him, but it wasn't just like kick rocks, don't let the door hit you on the way out. It was like, hey man, I really don't want to do this. I feel like my hands are tied. I've made the decision, so I'm gonna do it. But I want to offer you this. Like, I'll pay you to take a year off. Like, I will pay you very handsomely to take a year off. Get it together. You're gonna come back 64, 65. You'll still be the most sought after coach. I love this. This is just class act stuff from Steve Bisciotti here.
So, sounds from what I'm reading now, he's not going to do that. But he's also interviewing in a real position of strength. So if he doesn't like what he sees and he doesn't like the organization once he digs in, you can bet he's not going to take a job that doesn't have a quarterback. He's a little too young. He's a little too old.
That's what I'm saying. He's not going anywhere where it has to be like a fixer-upper franchise. He wants a turnkey franchise where he can walk through those doors and everything that he needs is already set up for him and ready to rock. That is the New York Giants, to a degree. It's not like he'd be inheriting a team on the caliber of the Ravens talent-wise, but the Giants have a young nucleus of a quarterback, running back, and a wide receiver, and a good pass rush, who should only get better. That is probably his best destination.
Old to be sitting around saying, what's the draft look like, and how many picks do you have, and let's start studying those college quarterbacks. So I only thought there was a couple jobs out there. I told him the one that I thought he could should take, and we'll see if I manifest correctly.
Steve, this is only the second time you'll have to go through the process with your leadership team to hire a head coach. Because you've had so much success in 18 years,
Yeah.
Are you essentially telling your next head coach, you need to get to the Super Bowl fast?
Win now.
Well,
You just said it over the offseason,
took
Steve.
Billick 2 years, John 5. Maybe I'll give this guy 6. I don't know.
All right. A little cheeky answer there from Steve.
I hope we pick the kind of guy that's going to get us there. I think we have a roster that's capable of it.
Exactly.
I think we have a GM that's capable of making that roster better
Hopefully.
on the fly. And, I'll be patient to that point. Jerry, I'd probably give him 5 or 6 years, as long as I like everything else I see in him.
Eric, can you talk about how important it is for this organization to re-sign Lamar Jackson to a contract extension this offseason?
Well, it would certainly give us more flexibility, cap-wise, roster building. I think that we've done a good job. You know, we carried over this year almost $10 million, just over $10 million in money, probably double what we have in the last, however many years, I think. We do have a nice little nest egg. It's not as much as we'd like. A deal with Lamar would give us the ability to be more active, to re-sign some probably more players on the team and to potentially go after, a couple big-ticket items. We haven't traditionally done that. We've been, as you know, more reserved when it comes to free agency.
Boom, boom, right there. Right there. You might have missed it. But Eric Decosta just said something massive. Massive. Eric Decosta just articulated that he hopes that Lamar Jackson will give them the flexibility to do some things with the cap that they don't normally do, i.e., sign big ticket players. That means proven players. That means what I would assume is a proven edge rusher. It's painfully obvious that the Ravens are missing that. And it's also painfully obvious that if you don't have that, you're going to be very limited. If you don't have that, your team can't turn the football over 3-4 times and you still win by 20-plus points going away, Houston Texans. So it looks like the philosophies of Eric Decosta when it comes to drafting and, carrying this offseason are going to change a little bit. He wants to go after a big ticket item. You heard it there first. And he's hoping Lamar Jackson and his contract negotiations will give him leverage to do that. Interesting stuff.
We like the amount of draft picks we have this year. We do have money to go out and re-sign guys, free agents that we have right now. Some good players, certainly. But having more money would be helpful for sure.
Steve, I know it's early days in the coaching search, but is there anything that you have decided that you want to prioritize in hiring the next coach, and is there anything that could be disqualifying for the success of John?
Great question.
No, it's kind of interesting because when we started focusing on this, the very first thing that I said to Eric and Sash was, unlike 18 years ago, I am very intrigued by coaches that were the hottest offensive and defensive coordinators 5, 6, 7 years ago in their cycles and got jobs and went to teams that were non-competitive and didn't have a quarterback. And they grind for 3 or 4 years, and they're caught up in the cycle of many of my partners that are turning these. I think it's average 4 years career, right? I think the head coach is about 4 years. As we proved, I think we've got a quarter out now, right? 8, 9. So, the one thing that I know that I will probably take it on the chin is if our final candidate is an ex-coach who has a losing record, and you all are going to have to understand that we are going to be able to judge that failure with his circumstances and marry that up and not disqualify them.
So interesting again. Very good insight here from Steve Bisciotti and Eric Decosta. I am loving this. Steve Bisciotti is saying here that they want a guy who can have a losing track record maybe, but they're going to look at that losing track record and look at why, right? So a name like, I think it's Mike LaFleur comes to mind, where he was the offensive coordinator for the Jets for a couple of years, right? Didn't go so well, right? Didn't do too hot. But that's because it was the Jets. You can attribute that to it being a bad team that he was on. So it makes it interesting when you think, because I think of a Mike LaFleur, who they have not interviewed yet. I think of a Brian Flores, who they just got done interviewing probably right before they stepped on the podium here today. And, you might even think of a Kevin Stefanski, right? Cliff Kingsbury. there's a lot of guys who you would think that, like, okay, maybe they had some failures, some bumps in the road. Robert Saleh, okay, maybe they had some bumps in the road with some bad teams in the past, but we're not going to let that cloud our judgment on whether or not we bring them into Baltimore, because we feel like we have all the pieces that anybody can need. So as long as you have the right offensive or defensive mindset, we think that we'll give you the keys to this franchise and let you rock out with it. We're not going to penalize you for, being on the Jets, Robert Saleh, LaFleur, you know what I mean? Like, that sort of thing. I love this.
So it's interesting you said, is there anything that's disqualifying? Where we are, I could say I'm disqualifying coaches with losing records, but I think you have to remember that they were the hottest coaches in their cycle, and they got jobs, and they got tough jobs. And I don't think we have a tough job. I think that we got to we created the best opening in this cycle.
Yeah.
And so that was the one category that I didn't want to ignore, because the first thing you all are going to say is, my God, he went 38-48 in his last job and they're hiring him. When Tony Dungy said, this is a bad decision and good luck finding someone better than John, I literally wanted to call Tony and say, you remember John 18 years ago?
Uh-oh.
How can you take our success and use it against me while we're out trying to find the next John Harbaugh? That's impossible. So if I hire an offensive coordinator or a defensive coordinator,
fired, Tony Dungy.
None of y'all can say anything about his poor record the first time he was a head coach. And so it would be very easy for me to try and avoid those ex-head coaches because they have losing records. But I'm telling you, we are keen to their circumstances, and we won't let their first shot at a job influence us negatively for this one. As far as offensive and defensive coordinator,
I think Brian Flores might be in the lead right now. Think about this. They just interviewed Brian Flores. It is fresh on the brains of Steve Bisciotti. Fresh on his brain. You know that is the conversation that was had verbatim in that interview that took place earlier today. Hey, man, we're not going to judge you by, your past struggles. You were in some situations where, it was a tough job. It was a tough position. But this position that's open for us right now, it's one of the easier ones. And we think that your mindset, your defensive mindset, can reinstill what it means to play like a Raven, right? Can reinstill the Ravens way with a defensive-minded head coach who was at the top of his game, the hottest, most sought-after guy within the last 5 years, who kind of fell off because he took some tough jobs. I'm telling you, man. I'm telling you. And then you couple that with Steve Bisciotti saying, John Harbaugh isn't going to want to go somewhere without a quarterback. Steve Bisciotti knows the importance of already having a quarterback ready to go. Going down to Miami and having so much uncertainty, okay, is it going to be Tua Tagovailoa for another year? Is it going to be Quinn Ewers? Are they going to draft again? Everybody knows Tua wasn't it. And Brian Flores never saw eye to eye with him. I'm sure they had those same conversations earlier today. I think Brian Flores is the leading candidate for the next Ravens head coach.
Coordinator, I really couldn't care because you're bringing in three people. So I don't think that it matters for our offense whether a defensive head coach brings in a whiz of an offensive coordinator or we fall in love with an offensive coordinator and hire him as a head coach, because he's going to go then back and get an offensive coordinator, and then what that brings up is who's going to call plays, right? Whether it's the coach that comes in as an offensive coordinator or the offensive coordinator he picks, which seems to be happening a lot lately. I mean, I believe we have a dozen or so that call their own plays, head coaches, right? On defense and offense, maybe more than a dozen.
I think,
It's a lot.
again, I think Steve Bisciotti, the way he's talking, he wants a defensive-minded head coach with a whiz, his words, a whiz, a.k.a. a boy genius, at offensive coordinator. I think that's where they want to go with this.
Yeah.
And, oh, by the way, they've already interviewed Mike McDaniel as well. They interviewed for the head coaching job. But that doesn't mean if McDaniel doesn't end up with a head coaching job from somewhere else, it doesn't mean that they won't bring him back in as an offensive coordinator. Wow.
Steve, when you make a decision like you did with John, the question is going to come about the general manager as well. What is your evaluation of Eric, especially coming off of this year and expectations for him? And also, when you're making this hire, will the chain of command remain the same? Will GM and head coach both answer directly to the owner?
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, the hits and misses in this business, I think you have to average them out. I think Eric's one of the best GMs in the league. And so I think he's batting 800. I'm just making up a number for you, but I'm not going to look at Eric's 200 whiffs. I'll look at his 800 singles and doubles and home runs. You know, that to me, that's fair. I'm very, very pleased with Eric. I know that Eric has been very, very introspective about his failures and how they contributed to our dear friend being shown the door. And so nobody's harder on himself than Eric. So I think I can leave him alone for a while and focus on what we've got here with an empty chair. I'm sorry, what was your second question?
The other question was, will the chain of command remain the same?
That's a really good question, you know, and I've talked to Sash about it. Haven't really talked to Eric about it. You know, I don't spend nearly as much time around here as I did, but when I have both John and Eric Ozzie reporting to me. Oz, you here?
Yeah, I'm back here.
You know, it came naturally in 2008 that they would both report to me, and it never dawned on me. If Ozzie had come to me and said, "What do you mean John reports to you? I've been here forever. I've already built a Super Bowl team. I think he should report to me." I think I would have just said, "Yeah, okay." I don't think it really matters. The reason why I asked if you were here is I don't ever remember. The theory is you two battle it out, and if you ever come to a standoff, I'll be the tying vote. Did it ever happen? No. Not once. So I don't know that I need to burden Eric with that. I think that this is such a partnership that I don't think that power of one over the other is necessarily a good thing, because then the coach goes into every argument feeling like he doesn't have half the power. So I think it works, even though I work remotely, started long before COVID.
Oh, Stevie B is feeling himself now. He's
I
feeling himself.
invented working remotely.
He's feeling himself. Talk your shit, man.
Steve, a two-part question. One, you kind of went into
You
detail.
guys are all good at two-part questions, aren't you?
Let's go,
We're
Cordell.
that
Let's
microphone,
go,
you're not
Cordell.
giving
Friend of
it
the
up.
show.
We're
Friend of
trying
the
to get
show.
them all in.
Yeah, all right.
You were just talking about, what you're looking for in coaches and what basically there aren't any disqualifications. I am curious, are you strictly looking at NFL head coaching candidates? Are you dismissing college coaches? And also, how much input will guys like Lamar and the veterans that you spoke to before moving on from John?
Well, I talked to Lamar last night, and I told him
Good
that
question, Cordell.
he and I were both lucky because I found out in the nick of time that there is an NFL rule that if I did one Zoom with one of the 15, are you up to 15 now? 16. If I did one, I had to do them all. Now, working remotely makes that extremely difficult, and so I was luckily, you got me and said, you got to do them all. If you do one, I said, then I'm not doing this first one. So, so like the first time, I want, 4, 5 candidates. To answer your college question, I really don't know. I don't know how hard that would be. I know that there's been a couple college coaches that have reached out to us. We did not reach out to college coaches.
Interesting.
But if I was a college coach dealing with that portal in the NIL, I'd be at my doorstep. I can't imagine what these guys are going through. I'm friends with some college coaches, and it's a living hell. So if Eric's interested in a college coach, he's welcome to interview him, right? Second question. That's two-part.
The second one was about just how much feedback would you get from guys like Lamar and other leaders on the team in terms of their input on the
I think that Eric made it clear to Lamar that when we get down here talking to him, I think he's texting Lamar after every interview, whether it's Zoom or in person. And I think he's getting some opinions from Lamar. I said to Lamar last night, when they call me up from Florida, you better get your ass up here too. Because if you want to do the interviewing, these are going to be full-day meetings like they were 18 years ago.
Wait, what did he say?
And he's getting some opinions from Lamar. I said to Lamar last night, when they call me up from Florida, you better get your ass up here too. Because if you want to do the interviewing, these are going to be full-day meetings like they were 18 years ago. And they go from department to department to department, right? So I said to Lamar, you can jump on my plane or find another way to get up there. But if you're that interested, then we're going to get a schedule. He's going to call me up. He's going to offer you the same luxury. And I said, I hope you take it. And he said, yes, sir, I think I will. So we'll find out.
Golly, man, we are getting so much information. Oh my gosh, we're getting so much information. It's almost overwhelming. I'm trying to write it all down right now because this is a lot. This is a lot. And that was a great question by Cordell Woodland, again, friend of the show. He's been on the show multiple times. Definitely got to get him back on soon here to talk to him about stuff like this because that was great insight that we just got from Steve Bisciotti by way of Cordell's question. Steve saying that, Lamar, if he wants to be involved in the interview process, hey, come on, I got no problem with it. You can hop on my PJ and just meet me wherever, and you can sit right in on those meetings too. Can you imagine? You're a head coach interviewing for the Ravens job, and you got Stevie B in front of you, Don Decosta, and Lamar freaking Jackson asking you hey, how can you take us to higher heights? Man, that'd be kind of intimidating. But I love the fact that Lamar is seeming that he's going to be hands-on with this hiring process. This lets me know that it probably is going to take a little bit longer than I originally expected, guys. I think that it's going to take at least until maybe a couple weeks after the Super Bowl, I would say, or maybe right after the Super Bowl is when the Ravens make their final decision because it looks like they are totally doing their due diligence. Like I said, they're up to 16 candidates right now that they have interviewed or at least put in requests to interview. So if Lamar Jackson's a part of that process, I love that because the last thing I want is them to bring in a guy who Lamar didn't really want himself. You know what I mean? I want them to bring in a guy who Lamar Jackson has 100% faith in. That's what I would want to see. Chef Spicy Rice says triple threat interview. Yeah, man. That'd be tough.
Steve, I just had these reports. Mike Tomlin has got terminated or stepped down.
I'm sorry, Mike.
Mike Tomlin stepped down at Pittsburgh.
He did? Is it official?
That's what I keep hearing. So is he a candidate here?
Ooh.
Holy shit, Mike. Wouldn't that be awesome?
Oh, let's go, Steve.
Only if John takes the Pittsburgh job.
Oh, my gosh.
Wow. Wouldn't that be interesting? I don't know. That thing last week, maybe disqualified him for my opening after our kicker missed a kick to let them advance. Good for Mike.
Shots fired at Tyler Loop.
Yeah, I don't know. Talk to him. I love Mike. I mean, I've admired Mike for 18 years, and that's really shocking that he did it that way. But yeah, that's kind of crazy.
I wouldn't take that question serious, guys. Like, I don't think that anybody's really considering the Ravens bringing in Mike Tomlin to be head coach of the Ravens. That would be absolutely just shocking developments. But I think it was more so like a tongue-in-cheek joke, because it is like, again, it really seems like Harbaugh and Mike Tomlin are the same coach coaching on the same team. You know, all they did was just beat each other year after year after year after year. Nobody really established too much dominance over the other. I know Tomlin has the record over Harbaugh. But again, there's reasons why both of these guys are getting fired a week apart from each other after working for their respective organizations for almost 20 years. All right, there's just so many similarities, right? So I like the tongue-in-cheek question there from him. Obviously, it just wasn't meant to be taken seriously, but I love how Steve Bisciotti responded.
Didn't know that. I'll leave that to E. Wow.
Eric, this is a question for you or for Steve if he has one. We heard that Nnamdi Madubuike from John, he would provide his own update, but we haven't really gotten an update in a while. Do you still expect him to share what's going on, or do you have any update on his situation?
On John's situation?
No, Nnamdi, come on, man. Listen.
On Justin Madubuike, Nnamdi?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. You know, I can't really discuss that, obviously. I will say, you know, to have Nnamdi this year was a horrible situation for our team. I think it affected us in different ways, in many ways.
It did.
A great player, a great person, special person. Still working through a lot of his, you know, different ideas and things that we can hopefully get more and more information about his situation. But more than that, I think just I couldn't talk about specifics with him and his situation.
Eric, Steve kind of brought up your role with the roster construction.
Kind of the safe answer.
The season not going.
I still think that Nnamdi is done here, you know, in the NFL. You know, if he wasn't, then they'd be able to give us more, you know, information than they've been giving us the past, couple months.
Going the way it did and the result that happened with Harbaugh. What do you see as the biggest roster failures and disappointments on your end with this team?
Well, you know,
Offensive line.
honestly, when you underachieve, you can blame a lot of things. You look at a lot of situations and players. I think we didn't play consistently from game to game. Some games the offenses played well, the defense didn't perform well. Some halves the offense looked good, the defense didn't. You know, weak half to half. I think generally speaking, we've got to do a better job of creating pressure on defense. That will help the second.
See, there you go. That's the first position group he brought up when it came to what have your biggest failures been. He said we haven't been able to create pressure. Who creates pressure? Defensive line. Who's their sole job to create pressure from the outside? Edge rushers. What did he say he wanted to bring in this offseason? A big-ticket player. The stars are aligning with basically everything that they're saying. They're saying a lot. And you put it all together, it paints a beautiful picture for what their plans are for the 2026 offseason. They are going to go out, extend Lamar Jackson, bring in a defensive-minded head coach with an offensive genius, and they're going to get a big-ticket player like an edge rusher, a proven edge rusher. I love this.
Secondary, I think, being complimentary on defense that way, getting after it, affecting the quarterback, affecting the pocket, would be I think something big. You know, I know the offensive line seemed to be a narrative this year.
Okay. Yep. See, there you go.
In some games I thought the line played well, in other games we struggled. I think we have pieces. I think we've got to be more consistent on the offensive line. We just didn't gel quite as much this year in that way. And yet I say that, and I think we led the league in rushing, maybe. And that was with less quarterback-driven runs. So.
Real quick, y'all, like the video, subscribe to the channel if you are enjoying the content. Let's continue.
I don't think it's one specific thing. I think we underachieved in as a scouting staff, as a coaching staff, as players. I think across the board, and we have to own that, and I think we will. I think we're excited about it. We've been in this position before many times over the last 30 years where we've had to rebuild and tweak and change and adjust and really look at ourselves and say, what can we do better? I think it starts with me. It starts with the new coaching staff, and I think the players will be accountable as well.
I think the coaches have to take a lot of that, too, because I think that sitting here last year, everybody said that it was our offensive line and our pass rushing, because Eric had to replace 3 offensive linemen.
Okay.
And he did it, and it worked well. And I think we finished second in sacks last year after everybody was calling that our 2 weaknesses. We got in here, and those are the exact same things that everybody said. I think Madubuike is part of the reason why Kyle Van Noy went from 10.5 12 sacks to 2. I think it was a domino effect. I think it was a trickle effect.
What did I not just say this last night? Did I not just say this last night on the Purple Rain podcast to Alex? I just said that losing Nnamdi Madubuike was a domino effect that impacted the likes of Kyle Van Noy, the secondary, so on and so forth. So to hear Steve Bisciotti literally say what I said last night verbatim here, crazy stuff. I feel like some of these people be listening to us sometimes. I really do. Let's continue, though.
I think Travis Jones being with Broderick on and Madubuike gone, God bless Travis. I think he did the very best he could. But if he had had Madubuike next to him, he'd have been singled all year long. And instead, they were able to double him all year long. And so, and I think those offensive linemen didn't improve. And so when I said the coaches, that's what I meant. I think that you can look at a lot of guys on our team that we had expected to take the next step that did not take that next step. And we've got to get to the bottom of that.
Did he mention Falele
and scouting?
Can somebody please bring up number 70?
Hey, Steve. Good to see you right here. As far as how important are fan voices when it comes to crafting big decisions? Seeing empty seats at halftime at some of these games, or a primetime failure this year, after you guys go through all that you do to put on an incredible spectacle for that game, how important was that? And how do you gauge it? With social media, it can be a really loud voice, and it can be, but a very small minority. How do you go about doing that, and how important is it?
It's not that important, Pete. I just don't know. I know the volume went up this year, and I know the majority of that turned on John. And I think it did affect me. It was one of the things that I'm putting together. And I'll be honest with you, when you say the effect it had, you know what effect it had on me? I couldn't stand people attacking my friend. So some of the stuff that they talked about with John ate me alive. And so, like I said, part of my feeling like when my instinct says, now's the time, it was, I get to relieve John of all that crap too. And John gets to start anew, and John gets to be the everybody's number one choice to be that. And so I kind of...
So in a lot of ways, he's saying that he took the shackles and he freed John of all the criticism and basically put him out of his misery that was being the Ravens head coach. And now he's launched back into, I don't want to say the stardom, but this kind of the state of being sought after by everybody again, and kind of regarded as, oh, he's the best candidate. Like, we all want to talk to him. We want to interview him. I see what Steve is doing here.
I kind of thought, again, that there is never a good time, but we went backwards the last 3 years. That, to me, was a bigger thing. but they're putting that on John and John and John and John. And so, you know.
But understand why we're putting that on John is because he's the only common denominator. It's not like we've had the same coordinators for the past 18 years. It's not like we've had the same players for the last 18 years. He's been the coach for the last 18 years and was only able to squeak out one Super Bowl victory that a lot of people don't even attribute to his, input, to his influence. That was on the defense and all the dogs we had back in the day. So that's why the fans were putting that on Harbaugh. We had nowhere else to turn. You forced our hand, Steve Bisciotti. By making us wait so long, you forced our hand. You think that Ravens fans really wanted John Harbaugh to fail? No, because if John Harbaugh fails, that means the Ravens failed. If the Ravens fail, that means our favorite team fails. And that's not good. None of us like that. None of us 9-to-5ers, non-billionaires and multimillionaires. We are invested, like you said at the very beginning of this interview. We are the heart and soul of the team. The fans are. So, yes, we have an emotional, a financial, a mental investment into this team. We didn't want to let go of John, but it had to happen. It had to happen. And I get that was your friend and everything like that, and I still commend you for making the decision you did. You know you did the right thing. It's okay to admit that the fans were right. You don't have to insult our intelligence at every turn. I know Steve isn't necessarily doing that verbatim right here, but he's not swinging far enough on the, fans are smart too. Fans have eyes. Fans know football. Fans aren't just like drunk idiots watching these games at home with no idea of what's going on. Like you could just say that. You can just say that.
Part of it to me was, if the narrative is that bad, then we need to shake it up. And again, knowing that John didn't have far to fall, it made it much easier for me to make that decision, right? Because I knew it wasn't going to hurt him that bad. And when I talked to him on Thursday, gosh, he was giving me advice to the Ravens, and I was giving him advice to these openings. And so, we're going to be friends forever. And now I know John went from being hammered by the press, and I don't know how much Ingrid reads, but I'm sure she does. We've got some protective mama bears out there that don't like their husbands being treated like that. But because it's so anonymous, it's really a major accumulation I see there. But a lot of them are talking the truth, if you will. In other words, AFC Championship to division round to not making the playoffs, we own that. That's us. And so, unfortunately, John was the one to take it. But if I had fired Eric, he'd have been the hottest GM available in this cycle too. And so,
which is
John
still
was
on the
one to
table.
go. But
so don't get too comfortable, Eric.
It's not a major factor.
That's what that tells
for
me.
It really isn't. It's our world here, and I think that I'm pretty good at keeping it in my major decisions.
Problem about that is, I get he's saying it doesn't matter, fan input, it doesn't matter. But like somebody said in the chat, Mocha Nurse says, guess what? It worked. It's been an embarrassing season. Ravens flock are not used to this. 1-5 is absolutely just nasty work. Sorry, guys, my dog is barking right now. I'm gonna let it keep going.
Close to home.
Question for Eric. As you go through this search process looking for the next head coach, what can you share about what's happening in order to conduct this search process and what you're looking for as you narrow down the list to the group of finalists?
Well, fortunately, I think we were prepared, ahead of time, which was good. We started a day late compared to some of our opponents who started on Monday. We started really on Tuesday night. We want leaders. We want the best leader we can find. We want somebody who's going to hold the players accountable. We want somebody who's an expert in X's and O's. We want somebody who the players can relate to, but also somebody that's going to be firm and continue the culture that we've built, which we think is important. And as we've gone through our first 7 or 8 interviews that we've had, it's apparent that this is a job that coaches covet, number one. They appreciate the roster that we have. They admire this organization for the continuity that Steve and Mr. Modell before him put in place. And they see that this is really a destination place for coaches. So I think we're going to be in a good position. There's a lot of interest. I've never been through this process like this. I had no idea how many phone calls that I would get from people, agents, from coaches, people in the media, the national media, the local media. Like, there's just tremendous interest in this particular opportunity.
Damn, bro. Take a cough drop or something. But look, let's break this down, because I think what Eric Decosta just said is really important. I know he's not done, but before I lose my train of thought on this, Eric Decosta just said, when talking about who they want next as Ravens head coach, the qualities that he's looking for, this is in order what he said. Number 1, he wants a leader. Number 2, an X's and O's guy. Number 3, somebody who is relatable for the players. And number 4, somebody who can continue and kind of keep the continuity of the Ravens organization, basically keep the Ravens way the Ravens way. If there's any of the head coaching candidates, right? Let me make sure I'm not muted. Okay, I'm not. If there's any of the head coaching candidates that check all, if not most, of those boxes, I would say it has to be Brian Flores. And then when you couple that with what Steve said earlier in the interview, basically saying that he wants a defensive-minded head coach with an offensive whiz. I mean, he talked like hypothetically that that's what would be ideal. I think Brian Flores makes all the sense in the world, man. You get a guy with experience. You get a guy with, like, who Steve Bisciotti said he had a head coaching job before, but the job was tough because he didn't have the talent, and we're not going to hold that against him. You get all of the qualities. Again, all of the qualities that Eric Decosta just laid out. I think it's a no-brainer. And here's the biggest thing. They just got done interviewing Brian Flores earlier today, right before they stepped on this podium. So I think a lot of the sentiments that they're sharing with us are based off of their most recent conversation with Brian Flores. That was their last interview, literally just today. It's fresh on their heads, in their brain. I think that's where they're going to go. I really do. If I was a betting man right now, I don't know what the odds are for Brian Flores to become the next Ravens head coach, but I'd give him some really, really good odds. Top 2, maybe not 2. All signs are pointing towards Flores. All signs.
And I feel very confident with our people, with our staff, with Steve, who's an expert in finding people, with Ozzie, who has done this before and found a Hall of Fame coach, along with Steve. Some of the other guys sitting up here, I'm very confident we're going to get the best coach to take us to the next step.
Steve, do you sense an urgency from Lamar to sign another extension? And are you 100% sold that you want him to be the central figure in the organization for the foreseeable future?
I want him to be my quarterback.
Interesting. Interesting.
Excuse me. I want him to be my quarterback. I told him his extension was, we had some mechanism to keep him in place last year that we don't, or 3 years ago, that we don't necessarily have now. So I need to make sure that there's only one way. If he doesn't want to do an extension, then we throw those $74 million out into void years, and Lamar's coming back at the same cap number he was last year. You can play with that money all you want. That's not what we want. We want another window, and Lamar knows that. And I think that he's amenable to doing something that that mirrors the last deal he did, although the annual number will be a little higher. But I'm hoping that it's plug a new number in the same contract he signed last year and move on. And the urgency of that matters to me because we've got free agents, and I don't want to go into free agency with that hanging over our head. And I made that clear to Lamar, and I think he was very appreciative of my stance and hopefully willing to work with Eric and not get this thing dragged out into April like it was the last time.
Interesting stuff there. Interesting stuff. I mean, from start to finish, that answer was pretty fascinating because the reporter asked him the question. He says, hey, do you want Lamar Jackson to be a central, kind of piece of this organization for years to come? And Steve kind of shuts that down as like, well, no, I want him to be my quarterback. A little interesting there. But he goes on to say, to really get in the weeds about the details of this contract negotiation and where his head is at. Again, we're getting so much information here. Steve Bisciotti basically just said, like, yeah, we could take the $75 million and just kick him down the road for void years, and Lamar Jackson stays, right? But we don't want to kick the can down the road any more than we have to. We want to make an extension now, right? That frees up cap space now to where we can go get these free agents. He said we can get free agents and, we can sign all our draft picks, whatever. It sounds like they're going to, and he also said he just wants to plug and play Lamar's last deal. So let's just take the contract back out from a couple years ago and let's just put a new annual, however many $1 million per year right there. That number is going to go up, right? Man. So it sounds like they're going to get a deal done with Lamar. He also feels like Lamar Jackson is willing to do a deal like that based off of the conversations that he's had with him. So I don't want to say a Lamar Jackson deal is imminent, but I think that the combination of, Steve Bisciotti being willing to probably make him the highest paid in the league again, him actually being willing to do that, and then also with Lamar Jackson also knowing that they're about to step into a new kind of era of the Baltimore Ravens, right? It's not just going to be the same old Ravens with Harbaugh. We're running it back. Here, Lamar, sign up for 3 more years at X amount of $1 million to run it back with Harbaugh for 3 more years after you just told me that we need change. That change probably needs to happen. Again, also mentioned in this interview. I don't think that that's what went down either. I think Lamar's coming back. I think he's coming back. Well, I know he's coming back, but he's going to get a lot of guaranteed money, and that annual per year is going up. Mog says the mechanism, aka collusion. Hey, not a bad point. Kind of shameless right there, right? I didn't even catch that. Let's keep going though.
Very hard for him to build a roster when that.
Oh yeah, you know what? Kwame's right. Says he was talking about the non-exclusive franchise tag 3 years ago. I remember. Yeah, that's right. My bad.
Thing is not settled. So,
Steve, Garrett Dvorkin, the Business Journal. You spent many years running a staffing company. Are there any experiences or lessons that you learned from that chapter you can pull on with this coaching search?
I think I used them 18 years ago to pick John. I've gotten a lot of nice texts from some of the leaders. Most of them are all retired by now. And those were those thin resume guys that I talked about when I introduced John and said, I made my life on people with thin resumes. No, I think most of my recent experience in the NFL, it will be what I'm looking for because I kind of am a little more tied into what that means. Let me be clear. I am much more interested in the guys like Sasha and Eric and Ozzie that are working with this guy 70 hours a week than maybe I was back then. I was much more engaged. I was engaged in the NFL. I had risen to the top of the committees in the broadcast committee and digital media committee. And, you know, back then probably thought my participation was going to, I dreamed of a gold jacket like the Maras and the Rooneys. And that kind of dissipated as I realized that I was maybe being untrue to my wife when I told her that when I bought this team, I would treat it like more of a hobby than a business. And I think I found myself maybe treating it a lot more like a business. And again, putting family second. And so there was a time in 10, 11, 12 when I realized that in order to earn a gold jacket as an owner, you better be putting in those 70-hour weeks, and I wasn't willing to do that. So when I stepped back from that, and I'm very happy I did, I had enough time to care about the Ravens, and I figured the NFL could survive without me. And so I want very much this person to be picked by Eric and Oz and Sash more than me. When I come in, when they call me in for these 5, I'm going to already know why they love them. And I'm going to come back and I'm going to give just them my honest opinions, my reservations, if there are any, on individuals that may be a red flag that they didn't see. So I would hope that when I spend a lot of time with these people, that I might unearth some things, which I think I'm really good at, unearthing some details that maybe others missed. And I think that I'd like to feed that into them, and if it changes their top 5, you know, then great. And if it doesn't, I want these guys to be partners. I mean, what John and Eric and I.
But again, guys, what does this say? Because he said so much in this interview. Like, we're already an hour into this episode of Quiet Storm Sports. Again, thank you guys for coming through. Please make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel as well if you're enjoying this content. We'll keep it coming to you guys, you know, as the offseason rolls on. But again, he said, Steve Bisciotti, that is, he has said so much in this interview that you can literally piece things together. Like, I can take what he just said right now and piece it together with what he said 30 minutes ago, and it creates, you know, clearly what his mindset is, right?
And as he went through these last 10 years.
Because he's saying that he wants to let Eric Decosta, Ozzie, and also Shashi Brown, the president of the Ravens, he wants them to collaborate and come up with their best 5. So ultimately, he wants them to make the decisions, but he wants to just kind of come in and give the final say-so. Okay, here's why I do like this guy in your 5. Here's why I don't like that guy. But again, if you piece together what he said 30 minutes ago, he said that, you know, he would want, and I have it in my notes here, I'm writing stuff down, a defensive-minded head coach and an offensive whiz at offensive coordinator. You know, so I just think that with all those things considered, and then with what Eric Decosta said he values, it's going to be a defensive guy. I don't know if it's going to be a Jesse Minter. It looks like they're going to go with a little bit more seasoned guy. To me, it's between how they feel about Brian Flores and Robert Saleh for next Ravens head coach. Because again, you get a defensive-minded guy, natural-born leaders, relatable to the locker room, X and O's on at least the defensive side of the football. You get continuity, the Ravens way, investing in defense, not literally like with Cap, but like, you know, philosophically. All signs point towards Flores.
I love John like a brother, but I didn't work side by side with him all day long. And so I know that this is the hardest thing that we've ever had to do. And I don't think any one of you think we blame John completely for our falling off our quest for Super Bowls.
Hey, Steve, over here. I do have a two-part question for you.
I knew you would, Jerry. I'm surprised you didn't have a four-part question.
If they would allow me, I would. If Tyler Loop makes that field goal, is John Harbaugh still here coaching this team?
For a week.
For a week, okay. And then I guess a follow-up.
Interesting. He just asked Steve Bisciotti. He said, if Tyler Loop would have made that field goal and beat the Steelers and sent the Ravens to the playoffs, would John Harbaugh had remained Ravens head coach? To which Steve Bisciotti replied, for a week. So is he like hypothetically assuming that if the Ravens did make the playoffs, they would have gotten bounced in the first week anyway? I don't know.
Follow-up, because it's been a while. What was your role? What was your input with the whole Justin Tucker situation and how that went down and led to Tyler Loop being here? We haven't heard from you about that, so I was anxious to hear.
None.
When the reports came out, how did you take all that? What was your reaction, and how did you?
Deferred to Eric and John.
Do you think if Justin were here, it would have been different?
No.
Fair enough.
That's a pretty dumb question, though. I'm not going to lie.
I mean, you mean I think you would have made the kick?
Yeah, like
maybe.
what? Maybe, right?
How do you know?
Huh?
How do you know?
How do you know?
Yeah, that's kind of a dumb question. Like, why are we even talking about Justin Tucker? It's 2026.
I feel terrible for
Yes.
Tyler. He's going to be a great kicker. He's going to learn from this. Every one of them have learned from those mistakes. It's a terrible job.
Not all of them, but
I mean, terrible job in the NFL. It really is. You have to work twice as hard to earn people's respect, and then they can hate you in a second. And so I think that kid's resilient enough from what I've learned. He'll be our kicker next year.
He did a great job. Came in,
Right, heard it
big
there
shoes,
first.
a lot of pressure. He had a great season.
Eric, this one's for you. Is there a timeline that you have in mind while you're doing several of these head coaching interviews throughout the next week or so? Just because in the sense that they have to then create their own staff as well,
Draft
I guess,
board,
which is
gotta prep for
sort of
that.
assumed. But is that the case if there a timeline just because everything that happens afterwards as well?
Yeah, so I'm kind of thinking of this process like it's a 3-week NFL draft. And, I've been through a lot of drafts, and so this is expedited, certainly. But I think we are trying to get as many interviews done as we can. I've never been a part of this, only once, and we interviewed a much smaller amount of people back then. We didn't have the ability back then to even use Zoom, didn't know what Zoom was. Rules right now kind of force us into that Zoom world. And so we're taking advantage of it. I've learned a ton of football, a lot of stuff in the last week. I think my partners would say the same thing. It's been a fascinating process. We've got, I think another 8 interviews, maybe 9 interviews between now and, believe it or not, Sunday. And maybe a couple more after that. And then we'll kind of take that list of 15 to 20 interviews, candidates, whittle that down to, 4 or 5, try to assemble as a group and figure out, the 5 guys that really resonate with us, that have the most qualities that we're looking for. Craft what that schedule might look like, bring those guys in, again, for a day. We've had a couple guys on site, but, bring those other 5 candidates in, talk to them with maybe a few other people in the loop as well. And then see if we can find a candidate.
Yeah, so basically what this means, we're talking about timetables here. Like, when can we expect for the Ravens to announce who their new head coach is going to be? Eric Decosta is saying here that they have interviews with guys all the way out until Sunday, and then they're probably going to do a couple more after that, which I would assume takes us into probably about mid next week. That's when they'll probably have their 5. They narrow it down to their 5 top candidates, and they have to have those 5 guys actually come to Baltimore, in person, sit them down, talk to them. That I would assume would take another week at least. So I think from right now, we're probably looking at another I say just to be on the safe side, final deliberations, 3 weeks. So basically after the Super Bowl. Like right after the Super Bowl, I think that we can expect for the Ravens to announce who their head coach is going to be. Somewhere in that window.
I think staffing-wise, again, given the rules, very hard for coaches to really fill out their staffs until really around the Super Bowl. It's challenging, and now it's not as easy as it used to be in a lot of different ways. I go back to when Seattle hired Mike McDonald. They waited until after we played in the AFC Championship to interview him for the first time. So we're ahead of the game, I think, in many ways. We've talked to some really good candidates. We've asked them about assistant coaches. That's typically a question that you might ask. What's your staff going to look like? We've been able to get a lot of good information on what their coaching staffs might look like. And then the strategy for us is to really look at, and again, I think it's not just the head coach. It's who is his coordinators, what are they going to look like, offensive line coach, secondary coach, and find the right.
Hey, at least we know we're not sticking with Warhop, right? New offensive line coach, Warhop, you got to go.
Right combination of coaches that make us better.
Steve, you mentioned having some level of patience for the new coach.
Is this for me?
Yes, Steve.
Okay. I'm sorry.
You mentioned having some level of patience for the new head coach. So what will your measures of success be to determine if things are moving forward as you envision for the organization?
That's a good question.
Well, if we fail, then I'll assess his contribution to that failure.
Sure.
Because like I said, this is an all hands on deck. When we fail together. And so, yeah, I mean, it's Eric's job to mentor him and guide him in our culture. Hope he understands it and can add to that culture. What we do on the field, it will play a role, but I certainly hope to get back to the playoffs, and I certainly hope to overachieve. It's really hard for me because I'm not doing this to be back like some of my partners doing this every 3 or 4 years.
Ooh, see, there you go. And this is what I said. I said this last week as well. Steve Bisciotti is not in the business of having, a head coaching carousel here in Baltimore every 2-3 seasons. Whoever he hires next, he wants him to be the guy for like at least 10 plus years. He wants a set it and forget it head coach. He wants a set it and forget it head coach, which makes a lot of sense. Makes a whole lot of sense to me, if I'm being honest with you. But then he also says here that, he would want to make the playoffs again. So I'm going to go ahead and jot that down as Steve Bisciotti's main barometer of success for whoever the next head coach is for the Ravens. You just got to make the playoffs in year one. If you make the playoffs in year one, I'll give you the benefit of the doubt on why you may be lost in the playoffs, whatever, but just make the playoffs. If it's a baby step from last year, if we go from missing the playoffs to making the playoffs with you, then sure. We'll give you some more chances, right? But I think just making the playoffs is good enough for right now, which, I get it. First year, you can't have expectations through the moon, but it is still important to win now. And like I said, I like what he said. I want to overachieve because so do I.
I mean, to me, that's hell on earth. So we're going to make it. We're going to make it right, and we're going to make it so right that we're going to have a lot of patience. Is that fair to say? We're going to be so confident in our choice that we're going to grant him a decent amount of patience.
There you go.
For Eric, it seems like you've been into,
which to me is at least 3 years, at least minimum 3 years, 3 or 4 seasons, as long as you are not the main reason, right? As long as we can't look to, lack of game management, right? As long as we can't look to, you obviously not going to the best players in the biggest moments, as long as we can't look to you looking dumbfounded on the sidelines, right, and seemingly not knowing what you're doing, miscommunicating with your coordinators and things like that, as long as it doesn't seem like you've lost the locker room in any way, we're going to give you grace. Just make the playoffs. That's all.
been in touch with Lamar a lot, it sounds like, and I'm curious, the communication between Lamar and the coaching staff, was that where it needed to be this past season, do you think? And I guess how much of a priority is that when you're sort of going through your interview process with prospective coaches?
Well, I think communication can always be better. I mean, just if you think you're a great communicator, then you need to be a better communicator. You have to over-communicate. I believe in that. And I think sometimes maybe people will get sick of the fact that I might say, you know, make sure we do this, make sure we do this, make sure we do this. What do you think about this? And it has to be that way. And I think with players especially, they're looking for feedback. They want to have a voice, but you've also got to encourage the feedback and encourage the voice and work and set expectations and hold people accountable every single day. And that's what the most successful organizations do on a consistent basis. Whether that's with your star quarterback or your third string inside linebacker. You've got to set expectations, hold players accountable, create foster a relationship where they love this place and love this culture, and football's the most important thing in their lives. And that starts with our scouts, selecting the right players, our coaches, coaching these players, developing these players, and our players living up to the faith that we put in them.
Somebody please just ask Eric, like, look, let's just cut the crap. Is Daniel Faalele going to be on this team next year? He's up for an extension. You guys clearly have shown an affinity to him by keeping him on the field so long. Somebody just please ask him before they wrap this up, because I'm sure they're getting ready to close. Is 77 going to be on the field? Is he going to be on the team? I need to know, because you're talking about holding players accountable. Didn't seem like it was a whole lot of that going on when it came to the offensive line. So a little bit disingenuous there from our guy, Eric.
Steve, right here. How's it going? Alex Glaze, WJZ. You mentioned Eric and Ozzie.
What up, Shelly? Steve Loop. What's going on, Steve Loop? Says Flock PRP. Salute to you. Shout out to you, Mr. Loop. Hope you're doing well.
And Sashi being involved in this process. Those are guys, obviously, you're very familiar with. When you're interviewing candidates.
Ashley Khalil, what's up?
How important is familiarity to this organization? Or do you believe like a fresh start completely is something that's needed?
Good question.
Yeah, that's a really cool question. And it's like we've interviewed people that have been with us, like Anthony Weaver. And I would think that he would be pretty impressive in his interview because of the time he spent here. So you're kind of handicapping fairly a person that has seen us from afar, but has no intimate knowledge of us. And I think Eric's really good at handicapping that knowledge to the lack of knowledge, right? So I would hope that Eric's not swayed by someone who has a lot of knowledge of our organization. I hope they don't take the pole position because they might be a better interview because they have such intimate knowledge.
Yeah, so basically don't give guys who have been in the building before the inside track just because they give you a good interview because they're familiar with the Ravens organization. Love what Steve is saying here. He's cooking. He's cooking again like he's been doing this entire interview, at least for 90% of it. Yeah, treat everybody with clean slate, right? Hell, as a matter of fact, I'd rather you handicap it the other way. You know what I'm saying? Like, I hope Eric Decosta is going into this and giving the side eye to some of these guys who have been here before, because we do need a change. We do need a fresh start. We do need a fresh voice, right? Maybe it does take some outside, influence and mix it with what we've got now to create something new, to create something fresh. Let's continue.
I think Eric's pretty smart and capable of handicapping that knowledge and taking it out of it when he's looking at them as equals.
Hi, Steve. Kyle Goon from the Baltimore Banner. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think you've said in the past you don't view the Ravens as a family sort of heirloom, sort of have some urgency and desire. And obviously you don't make a change like you did with John without feeling sort of competitive fire. So it's clear that you're feeling that. What's sort of your current vision of how your ownership will progress and your ownership, what your ownership looks like in the next 10 to 15 years based on how you're feeling now?
I'll be 80, Kyle. I don't see myself being, I mean, all my friends, all my favorite people in the league 25 years ago were younger than I am now. And so when I watch Jerry and Bob, I mean, I still love them to death. They've always been there for me. They were younger than I was when I met them and joined this league. So I know that's always been a topic of conversation. How long am I going to? Because I kind of always said, I'm not passing it down to the family. I made that decision 25 years ago. I don't think that's healthy for my family. I've seen families feud and ruin over these damn teams, and I was determined not to do it.
He's going to sell the team.
But when I watch guys like Art Blank and Steve Ross and Jerry Jones, and Jerry talking about what part of his anatomy he would give up for a Super Bowl at 83 years old, I don't want to be there. I really don't. I want to win a couple Super Bowls and get the hell out. I'd love that to be in the next 10 years when I'm 75. That's my dream. If I got one.
Hey, bro, he's keeping it so real on this interview, dog. Like we have to commend him. We have to commend him for like everything that he's saying right now. Like he is being totally vulnerable, totally honest. And I couldn't respect him more for it. We barely get to listen to this man talk. We don't. I mean, the last time we listened to him talk was, again, another Ravens media production over this past offseason where him and John Harbaugh were bumping shoulders and talking about how they want to win a Super Bowl now and all this good stuff. And a year later, not even a year later, you have Steve Bisciotti making these hard decisions and really telling you how he feels about, the head coach and where the Ravens are and how he feels about the team and what he wants to do, like future plans for the team. We're getting so much information. Let's keep going.
One of the top teams is 75. I'll probably stay till 76. So I'll probably bail somewhere around 10 years from now when I have a really bad season or back-to-back seasons. And he'll probably be coming with me.
Interesting. Right. About 10 seasons.
Eric said he's not a lifer either. So
these guys are having fun right now. So about 10 years, right? So by, what is it? What are we in, 2026? So by 2036, he wants to have a couple more Super Bowls so he can get up out of here. But I think regardless, he's going to probably get up out of here in the next 10 years. He'll sell the team. He's not going to pass it down to his kids. He said that wouldn't be good for his family. Totally respect that. I mean, he didn't have to say anything like that, right? But he was vulnerable in that regard. He's keeping it real, man.
Kevin Richardson with the Baltimore Sun. You talked about the importance of someone rushing the pass rushers and how that affects the defense. Would you be open to trades in the first or second round to get that young stud that can affect your whole defense?
I'm never opposed to getting an elite player. We almost made a trade at the trade deadline. We tried to make a trade.
Basically, no. He's not willing to give up no draft picks for a proven player. This is basically what he's getting around to saying. He's going to give you a bunch of word salad here, but he's getting around to saying he doesn't want to move those draft picks to get a premier player. And
we didn't get it done. But I do think that, I think a lot about these kind of situations. And it's not that draft capital, right? It's not, which is always a lot. You're giving up a lot of times multiple first-round picks. It's the combination of the draft capital and the salary, which in some ways, it's prohibitive. And I also think that, when you get into that mindset that you're one player away, you're ripe to be fooled. And we see it every year when teams make some of these blockbuster trades. Oftentimes they end up going the other way, and you just can look at teams. There's so many factors when that happens. I still believe the best way of building the team is, through the draft, because I've seen Ozzie do it so many years and do it at a Hall of Fame level.
Yeah, but big bro, you haven't done it. Okay, you haven't done it. Your hit rate on draft picks after the third round or after the second round, not good. Not a great track record. Most of those guys don't even play for the Ravens anymore. Some of those guys aren't even in the league. So it's like, you can sit up here and say, Eric, that, the main reason why we don't go after, big name players, proven players with our draft picks is because it's not only the draft picks, but it's also the cap space. Wink, wink, Lamar Jackson, give us a sweet deal so we can actually make a move with some of this money that we have in the cap. It's like, no, bro. Would you rather literally just watch seasons go by where you can't get any pressure, minus Nnamdi Madubuike, who is no more, right? You basically said, without saying earlier in this interview, he ain't coming back. Because if you still can't talk about it 3 months later, it's more serious than we're thinking. Or is probably just about as serious as we're thinking. So it's like, again, and you don't have a good track record of drafting these guys. You drafted a guy last year in Mike Green who I expect to maybe make some strides in the next couple of years. But do I think that warrants the Ravens not packaging together some draft picks along with restructuring some cap here and there, maybe getting a deal done with Lamar, and then packaging some things, putting together a package to go get a premier edge rusher? As much as you want to say the Ravens, like, oh, well, no. Eric just said here that when you start feeling like you're only one player away, that's when you're ripe to be fooled. If we didn't feel that way, if the Ravens didn't feel like they were one or maybe two pieces away, they wouldn't have fired Harbaugh. Do you understand? They wouldn't have fired Harbaugh. But you fired Harbaugh because you feel like you do have most of the pieces necessary. You do have most of the talent that you need to get to the Super Bowl. But there's a few pain points on the roster, offensive line, an edge rusher, or if you just want to go a whole front seven, the whole D-line. Those are where the issues lie, right? So not only do you want to put your money where your mouth is, I mean, again, you just got to change philosophically, because earlier in this interview, he said that he wants a big ticket item, And I think that a lot of what he's doing here, he's kind of positioning himself for the negotiation with Lamar Jackson, because he said earlier, hey, look, hopefully Lamar will give us a sweet deal to where we can go out, we can re-sign some guys, and we can go after a big-ticket player. And Eric Decosta said this. He said, we don't normally do that, but it is something that they'd be willing to look into. So I think Eric Decosta is mainly putting the ball in Lamar Jackson's court here, which is crazy to think about because Lamar holds all the cards, and Eric's trying to take some back right now.
We will participate in free agency, and we will trade for players. We've done that. It's got to be right player, right price. If there's a elite Hall of Fame type talent that's available that we think can come in and be, as Steve likes to call them, game wreckers, we'd look at that. We consider that very strongly.
Do we, though?
But to do that for a really, really good player and have to pay the exorbitant price and also give up all the draft pick capital, that can set your franchise back for a long time, as we've seen.
Steve, you did mention that you invited Lamar to come up for the interviews if he wants to, the final round of interviews and everything. When it's all said and done, how much of a say will Lamar have in the head coach selection?
A lot of say, but he has no power. I have the power. They have opinions, and I want.
So I guess the question would be, furthermore, how much are you going to value Lamar Jackson's opinion next to the likes of Ozzie, EDC, and Shashi Brown? Because obviously Steve has the power. Obviously Steve is the one who's going to sign off on whoever becomes the next Ravens head coach. So really, Eric Decosta doesn't have any power. Ozzie doesn't have any, and Shashi Brown doesn't have any power. They just have opinions, right? And if they come to a consensus, a general consensus of opinions, and they bring that to Steve Bisciotti, he's going to sign off on it, again, using his power to get it done. So a follow-up question, and I hope they ask this. I don't know if they will. Maybe I need to become a journalist or reporter one day. Follow-up question is, okay, well, how much are you valuing the opinion of Lamar Jackson next to all these other guys who are making these decisions when it comes to head coach?
I want them all. I care about my players very much, but I can't give them power.
It's giving, we can't let the prisoners run the prison. But okay.
Steve, there was a time when fans looked forward to hearing from you all the time. I think we called it State of the Ravens. We used to hear from you just about every year. Why did you stop, and can we look forward to hearing more from you in the future?
Like Seinfeld, I ran out of good material. I had to retire, and then he goes out, and next thing you know, he's doing like 80 shows a year. It's like, Jerry, I thought you were retired. So I don't know. I just always felt like if I put these guys in charge and they got us to the playoffs, look,
I don't know, man. I just feel like saying, like, it is keeping it a buck for sure. And I see you, D-Wiz, in the chat. But I don't know. Like, if you're Lamar, like, how do you feel hearing that? You know what I'm saying? Like, oh, Lamar has no power. Like, I just feel like you can word things just a little bit differently. Because, again, Lamar holds a lot of cards in this contract negotiation. So it'll be interesting to see if Lamar is like, you know what, actually, no, I want this, that, and the third in my deal. We're not just going to plug and play my contract from last time, and you raise my my average annual salary. No, I actually want this amount of guaranteed money. Rip up the old contract. Let's start anew. What happens when he does that? Do I think Lamar will be more willing to compromise in this new era of the Ravens, a new head coach, and he's going to have his opinion, valued, and he can sit in on the meetings and stuff like that? Maybe not. Maybe he does feel like he has a little bit more power. I mean, obviously he does have power. He does have power. I just feel like he could have worded that just a little bit differently. Just a little bit differently.
They gave me and I appreciate the local guys and like Jeff and Jameson, who are in national publications, but the majority of their focus is on us. And the national guys don't look at us as in crisis. And I think the closer you get to us, you see crisis by us failing right now. I just got to the point that I didn't see the benefit of sitting up here and dissecting losing in the division round. To me, it wasn't fair because it was the leaders that were making the decisions that were going to give you the best information. And I think one time I got up here and they said, how close were you to firing John Harbaugh? And it was like, that was about the time I decided that I don't need to be up here, because I thought that your questions were so narrow to an owner of a team that had made it to the division round that I just didn't think it was fair. I was probably going to put my foot in my mouth, which I'm really good at doing that too. And so I just bailed. I just kind of said to you guys, when we don't make the playoffs, I'll be there for you. But when we make the playoffs, I'm just going to leave it to my specialists to explain it all to you and what their plan is forward. And then interestingly enough, this is happening right now, and it would usually happen right now. And, we haven't been to Jupiter, and that's when I will grill my leaders on their plan. They will have 2 more, 3 more, 5 more weeks. Now, this could be different. I mean, we may be doing Jupiter in April for all I know. And Eric's going to go, I ain't got time for that. It's the draft. She's in pretty.
I will say that.
Trust me, I know. So I don't know when we're going to do it. Maybe we'll skip Jupiter this year. But that's why. It wasn't a mean-spirited thing, I promise you. I quite like being up here talking to you all.
So
I know how much time you put into our team, and I appreciate it very much. And so my don't be fooled by my absence that I have lost my respect and appreciation for this being your job, your whole job. And you want answers. And I will tell you today, the respect that I've heard here is off the charts. Like, I read Jameson's analysis and anatomy of the thing. I read Jeff's. I think you could put that all together and publish it and just say, you got all your answers. Because they're fair-minded guys. They've been with here forever. They're my two favorites because they're the two longest. Well, Mike, I'll throw you in there. You've been there as long as they have, so you're just a little meaner sometimes. So maybe you're in third place, okay? But
Nah. All my homies hate Mike Preston.
I'll give you, out of respect for your tenure, I'll give you third place. I love your love and your passion for my team. And what I heard today was people that I really believe came in here open-minded and willing to give us the benefit of the doubt. And I want you to know how much I appreciate that, because what I was most worried about was that you want to get into the details. And I've got some little things that rubbed me the wrong way for a long time, and you put them in the back of your head, and then you get closer, and then you start failing, and then you bring back things that bothered you, and you do it to justify coming to the conclusion that now is the time. And I just hope you respect me enough to know that I 100%, my instincts told me this was the time. And I may be right, I may be wrong, but I did it because I'm in charge of doing it. And your lack of digging into details saved us a lot of time, because I would have told you, this is like you all interviewing me and saying, let's talk about your divorce with your wife of 18 years. And can you tell me all the little things that like really built up to, we love John like a brother. And it was really the most difficult decision that we made, right? But we made it. And the fact that you all are willing to just say, I don't need to hear any of the sort of details.
But I get it. You appreciate us for not, really prying, or at least you appreciate the reporters for not really prying too much. But you kind of went through some details in this one. I mean, we all know that, it's common knowledge that the Ravens missed the playoffs, and last year they lost in the divisional, and the year before that they were in the AFC Championship game. So there's been regression. You mentioned that. I think that he shared more than enough details for me, at least.
It's the big picture.
I mean, remember that, he shared the conversation between him and John just an hour ago. He shared the whole conversation. Damn near had me choked up in here, because he was talking about how, John was telling him that, oh, you don't owe me anything, man. And Steve Bisciotti was getting choked up, and John was trying to console him. Again, this is all over the phone. He released a lot of details. I'm not going to lie.
We want the Ravens to succeed. I felt it was the right time to make the change. If not now, when? I guess is what I'm saying. Next year, I heard that we were contemplating, I wasn't even the decision maker, contemplating replacing the offensive coordinator and the defensive coordinator. And that may have been the final nail in the coffin. I thought, if I'm already here and my gut is telling me it's time, why would I let John rebuild an entire staff? Because I'm going to be sitting here next year saying, what the hell did I do last year? Last year was the time. So it wouldn't have been fair, because I think we had run our course. And if I didn't have the guts to say to my partners, you're on the fence and I'm on the fence and I'm slipping on this side, and I believe that your love for John and your respect for John is holding you back this much. I need you to move this much. I tried to take my love and respect of John out of it, and it's his best friend. So I don't know that he could.
I mean, look, man, for a guy who says that I appreciate you guys not getting into the details, he's getting into a lot of details.
And I admire him for it, but I had to look at them and say, you're pretty close to me. You're not there. I'm going to push you over the edge. I'm going to make the decision. And I made the decision by myself. And they understood. We had already talked about why I was there. And I didn't need them to come to my side of the fence for me to make this tough decision. So it was a wonderful, wonderful marriage. We accomplished great things. The next coach we get, I want
This man got his hand over his heart.
him to be a Super Bowl winning coach too. And God bless him if he can rise up to the level John did and be staring at a gold jacket. So that's our job. We take it serious. And thank you, all right, for being professional enough to know how hard this was for us.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Eric. Thanks, guys.
Well, there you have it, fam. There you have it. What, a whole hour and 45 minutes later. That was a lot of fun. We learned so much. I know so much more about this Ravens franchise and this organization and where they were coming from and where they plan to go, just based off of what they said here. Of course, I mean, actions will always speak louder than the words, so we'll see who they end up hiring for a head coach. We'll see what changes they make in the offseason. Are they going to move around some of those draft picks, or are they going to use all 11 again, you know? We'll see if they end up bringing in a big ticket player like Eric Decosta said that they were thinking about doing this offseason as well. So we just got to see. We just got to see. But that was a lot. That was a lot, was it not? Let's talk about it, right? We might as well just talk about it. I'm excited. I'm excited. Let's move on over here. I'm excited for this upcoming season. I am. I didn't think that. I honestly did not think we would get that much from Eric Decosta. I'm going to run through my notes here on this before I hop off in a little bit. We have still 350 plus people watching live right now. Thank y'all so much for joining this episode of Quiet Storm Sports. Again, I'm your host, Sutton Def. If you could, please make sure you like this video if you're watching on YouTube, and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube as well. We'd appreciate that. But look, let's get into some of these notes here. Let's get into some of these notes, and I want to break it down with you guys. What were your main takeaways? What were your main takeaways from this? For me, my main takeaway is the type of head coach. My number one takeaway is the type of head coach that is clear and obvious that this Ravens team wants. Again, if we do the thing where we just take stock of what they said here in this interview, in this press conference, all signs point towards a defensive guy. And if we do the investigative work to know that they just interviewed Brian Flores, I think it makes all the sense in the world that that is the direction that they go with this franchise. He will undoubtedly be, because they also said they're going to narrow it down to 5 candidates. They've already interviewed. They're up to like 15, 16 guys that they have already interviewed or plan to interview. And they said that they're going to narrow it down to 5 candidates: Eric Decosta, Ozzie Newsome, and Shashi Brown, president of the Ravens, and apparently Lamar Jackson, are all going to sit in together and figure out who are the top 5 names that they want as head coach. Then they're going to bring that list to Steve Bisciotti. He's going to dissect the list, and he's going to say, okay, here's why I like this guy. Here's why I don't like that guy. Here's why I think will be the best candidate. And then, you know, they're going to take it from there. But based off of what Steve said, Steve was kind of, hypothetically speaking about the type of coach that they would want in, that they would bring in. Because he was talking about, we don't want to judge coaches who, had a rough time on this team or whatever, because we know that this Ravens coaching job is not as hard as the Jets head coaching job. It's not as hard as the Titans head coaching job. It's not as hard as the Dolphins head coaching job, right? I mean, we've got one of the best quarterbacks of all time on the team. Talent everywhere on the roster, wherever you want to look. Shouldn't be too hard to take this team to higher heights. So that fits Brian Flores perfectly, right? Brian Flores was on a Dolphins team where he had a less than desirable quarterback in Tua Tagovailoa, and it was clear and obvious that he was not a Tua guy. But he was a big X's and O's guys on defense and was always known for having a lockdown defense. Lockdown Lamar Jackson that one year. I remember. I was there. So again, I think that all signs point towards them giving Brian Flores at least that top 5 candidate nod. And he might even make it to the top 3, top 2, which I would love. Zeke in the chat says, I hope Kubiak is the guy. Could be, but again, it sounds like from everything that they're saying, and I wanted an offensive guy too. Don't get me wrong. But it sounds like they're valuing in here. I wrote it down. Eric Decosta said himself, the main qualities that the Ravens are kind of looking for in their new head coach. They want somebody who is a leader. Brian Flores checks that box. They want somebody who's an X's and O's guy. Brian Flores checks that box, especially when it comes to the defensive side of the ball. They want a guy who players can relate to. You don't think Brian Flores checks that box? And then they also want a guy who can provide continuity to the culture of the Ravens. Brian Flores checks every single box. Not to mention, just before they got on that podium just now, that was who they interviewed last. They went straight from the Brian Flores interview to the podium and said all those things. Again, if I am a betting man, which I tend to be sometimes, I'm betting on Brian Flores being the Ravens' next head coach. And you can put me down for saying that, but I think as of today, that's where we're going. XVY says, I hope we get Flores before Steelers do. Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think that. And Flagship Fantasy says here, Flores is going to Pittsburgh sudden. He and Mike are very close, and Flores has spent time as a DC there. True. It still don't mean it's the most attractive job. It still does not mean it's the most attractive job. You don't know who your quarterback is going to be if you're Brian Flores and you want to go and take on the Steelers head coaching job. Would it fit? I mean, going from Mike Tomlin to Brian Flores, I don't want to say it's like a lateral move for them, but you're basically getting them the next Mike Tomlin. Similar, they handle themselves in similar ways. Both defensive guys, both no-nonsense guys, But again, the opportunity to play on a team where you're a defensive-minded head coach, and as long as you make the right hire at offense, you can just kind of set it and forget it with the offense. Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry, Zay Flowers, and those boys, they're going to take care of the offense. All I got to do is just focus on this defense. You're not on the Jets where you got to worry about who's your quarterback and how the offense is going to be run. You're not on the Dolphins where Tua Tagovailoa, all 5'8" or 9 of them, is trying to sit back there and play quarterback as a lefty, getting knocked out of every other game. You don't have to worry about, it would be the easiest job. It would be the easiest job for Brian Flores between that and the Pittsburgh Steelers. It would be a Steelers move to steal him away from us. I do believe that. But I think if you had to ask Brian Flores right now, hey, would you rather coach the Pittsburgh Steelers or would you rather coach the Baltimore Ravens? And I think a big thing comes down to quarterback. There's so much uncertainty at quarterback for the Steelers right now. Will Aaron Rodgers return? If he doesn't, okay, now you got to rebuild quarterback. If he does return, you're going to bring in a 43-year-old Aaron Rodgers who, is probably only maybe a year younger than Brian Flores himself. I don't know if Brian Flores necessarily wants that. I mean, Aaron Rodgers is not like the guy who you're going to, is going to just, I don't know. I just don't feel like he would let Brian Flores lead him. At this point, Aaron Rodgers is nothing but a mercenary quarterback in this league. If he stays with the Steelers for another year, it's just like, hey, I got one more chance at a Super Bowl ring. I'm just going to play the season out. Even if he leaves the Steelers, right? I think he'll be waiting by his phone for the next 2-3 seasons, just in case the team needs a quarterback down the stretch of the season, and he has an opportunity to come in and win another Super Bowl or go on another run. I think Aaron Rodgers is too 1 foot in, 1 foot out for Brian Flores to look at that job as an attractive job. Either way, I either have a 1 foot in, 1 foot out, 43-year-old quarterback, or I have no quarterback, and I'm a defensive guy, and that's my main concern this offseason, is rebuilding the offense. No. I don't see it. I don't see it. Personally, I don't. Solid to the Steelers. Let me see. They literally announced Tomlin stepped down right after we finished his interview. Sutton, you think that's coincidental? Yeah, I do think it's a little coincidental. Only because, I mean, it's so fresh. I mean, it had to happen, I think, at some point today. I think it is a little coincidental that we interviewed Brian Flores, and then immediately after the news drops that Tomlin was let go, or that he parted ways, that he left the Steelers. He's stepping down, right? I think it was a little bit of a coincidence. Man. All right, more notes. EDC also mentioned in that interview, he hopes Lamar Jackson will give them flexibility to sign big-ticket players. And those are his words, quote-unquote, big-ticket players. So Eric Decosta said, we normally don't, push our chips to the middle of the table in the offseason and go get a big name, big brand name guy who we know could come in and make an immediate impact. And immediately my mind went to edge rusher and guys like Max Crosby or whoever else we can get in here. So it kind of, again, EDC, I felt like he was putting Lamar, like the ball in Lamar's court a little bit. Like, hey, we're doing these contract negotiations now, but if you want some more big name players on this team that are going to help get us over the hump along with this new head coach, maybe take a little bit less than what you really, really want so we can have some more flexibility. EDC said that. I thought that was huge. Steve Bisciotti mentioned that college coaches have reached out to the Ravens about the head coaching job, but the Ravens have not reached out to any college coaches for the head coaching job. So it doesn't seem like they're going to go the college route. They're not being intentional about that at all. So, which I understand. Trust me, I understand. I totally get that. Let me see. Eric Decosta also said, he put on record, the Ravens' number one problem that they had on the field was that they didn't create pressure. They didn't create pressure, which leads me to believe that big ticket player that he might be big game hunting for this offseason is going to be an edge rusher. That's what I see. Let me see. What else? Steve Bisciotti saying Lamar Jackson will have input on the new head coach. And he's basically he told Lamar, hey, look, if you want to sit in on these meetings, and you got to get the hell up to Baltimore from Florida, because apparently I didn't know this. Steve Bisciotti, his mansion is in Florida. As we know, Lamar Jackson is from Florida. So he was basically telling Lamar, like, hey, look, if you want to come up to Baltimore and sit in on some of these interviews, you could do it, but you got to get the hell up here. Either hop on my private jet or find your own way up here, and we can do this. So it's good to see that Steve Bisciotti is, including Lamar Jackson in the head coaching search here. It's not just Eric Decosta. It's not just Ozzie Newsome and Shashi Brown. You need a mouthpiece for every player in that locker room, a.k.a. Lamar, to be in there and sitting on the meetings and really judge these guys for himself too. That's important. Now, Steve Bisciotti went on to say that while Lamar Jackson, his opinion is valued, he has no power, which, I felt like it was a little bit harsh to say just like that. I mean, you could have just said because he didn't say Eric Decosta doesn't have any power. He didn't say that Shashi Brown or Ozzie Newsome doesn't have any power. He just said Lamar Jackson doesn't have any power. His opinion is going to be valued, but doesn't have any power. That was a little weird to me. I get it. It was a little weird, because he's basically saying, Steve Bisciotti, I'm the one who's going to be signing off on whatever final decision that we come up with. Which, again, I understand, but I just don't think that you had to say that, just in quote, Lamar Jackson has no power. That just doesn't read very well. Okay, I could see somebody twisting that up in a headline and it'll be on SportsCenter tomorrow morning. Steve Bisciotti says Lamar Jackson has no power when it comes to Ravens head coaching decision or the search. And they'd be right. It'd be a little clickbaity, but they'd be right, pound for pound. You know, Steve loves Lamar. I think so. I hope so. Hope so. I hope so. Denise says, great work, Sutton. Appreciate that, Denise. We're coming up on 2 hours. Wow, it is. It's been 2 hours. Hasn't even felt like I've been on live for 2 hours right now. Vico says, great video. Good times to be a Raven. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Hopefully you guys are liking the video, subscribing to the channel as well. We'd appreciate that here at the Purple Rain Podcast. We do go live pretty much every day, but our main show is on Mondays and Thursdays. Me and my co-host Simply AS10. Mondays and Thursdays at 6:30 p.m. Eastern time. That is, and then I'm live here every day on Quiet Storm Sports. We also have Sudden Reactions that we do in the mornings. Those are a lot of fun. We had some fun this morning as well. But let me see. You don't be still a player, dude, is the owner. Sudden, stop that. What do you mean he don't be still a player, dude, is the owner? I don't know quite what you're saying here, Lil. I feel like I know what you're saying, but I don't know quite what you're saying. Kogan says Mike Preston loved that. He probably loved that Lamar has no power line. He's writing the article as we speak. Yeah, you're probably right. Probably right. Stretch 52 says Steelers have rights to Tomlin if he decides to coach in 2026, so he would have to be traded if he's going to coach next year. Interesting. But they said he was stepping down. But do you think that it's at all possible that the Steelers just kind of let him go and then it becomes more of like a mutual amicable parting of ways and then he's free to go do whatever he wants? I think that they would grant him that liberty at least, right? I don't think that they would make him, be a part of a trade package. I think that they would give him that liberty to go out and, do due diligence on his own, interview at certain places and, paint his own story. Flagship Fantasy says, Sutton, he also said he had a list of Eric Decosta's shortcomings, but wasn't going to beat him up in front of everyone publicly. Not those exact words, but that's what he was getting at. I might have missed that part. Says Sutton, you catch some of those subliminal shots he threw at Eric. EDC looked like he was sweating. Yeah, EDC, he was covered up the whole time. You can just tell body language wise, like he had his chest covered up, hands over his chest, not being vulnerable. You can tell he's feeling the heat a little bit. Steve did mention in there somewhere, he was like, yeah, if I would have fired Eric Decosta, it'd have been such and such, and I'm pretty sure that probably woke up Eric like, I could be on the chopping block too. I didn't know. But okay, guys, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. I'm going to leave this here. It's been a great episode of Quiet Storm Sports, the longest episode of Quiet Storm Sports, but it was all worth it, every single second. If you're just getting in here, please, please, please rewind. We reacted to everything. We broke down everything that Steve Bisciotti and Eric Decosta said, and they said a whole lot. And trust and believe, there's going to be more content coming from this channel about what we just learned today. So if that sounds good to you and you want to hear more breakdowns just like you heard today, make sure you please like this video, subscribe to our channel on YouTube as well. And if you want exclusive content, which we will be dropping all throughout this offseason, going into next season, make sure you join our Rain Game membership as well. We'd appreciate that. Again, love you guys. Appreciate you guys. Again, like the video before you get out of here and comment down below what your main takeaways are. I want to make sure you guys' voices are heard here because I'm really, really interested in seeing what you guys have to say. But again, love you guys. Appreciate you guys. It's been a great stream. And thank you so much. Says, I'm a new subscriber. Love that. Appreciate that, man. And we'll see you guys in the next episode of the show. Peace.